All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Jason Brown here. Today, I have a special guest who's going to be talking about the credit industry, how to improve your credit score, and what exactly is a credit score. So today we have Miss Wanda Lacey, who is the founder and principal owner of Belle Financial Services. The firm's mission is to provide financial literacy resources to adults who wish to escape poverty and become financially independent. Wanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be here and to talk to you again. So like you mentioned, Belle Financial Services, we are a boutique financial consulting firm. So our overall mission is really to help people just understand their finances a little better in all areas, whether it's investing, credit education, or just like growing your net worth. So we provide customized consultations, but we also provide credit services where we provide insight into how they can dispute errors on their credit report, or we can actually do it for them and do a lot of the heavy lifting for them and work with the credit bureaus. So very nice to be here.
Well, this is perfect because this is, what we want to talk about today was just, basically, the 411. What is a credit score? How important is it? What you were just talking about, how can you improve your score? And these are all going to be all the questions we're about to go through. So let's just jump right into it. So the very first question, the basic question, what exactly is a credit score and how is it determined?
So the way that I think of a credit score is it's like your report card. So in school, we had A through E or A through F, and your credit score is basically like your economic report card. It's a 3-digit number. It ranges from 300s, with 300 as the very lowest, to 850, which is like superior credit. There are a lot of different factors that make up your credit score. It's determined by basically the way that you pay your bills, what type of debt you actually have. And it's basically the credit bureau's determination on whether or not you're going to pay back a debt, if that makes sense.
Right. So they're grading you based on your potential ability to pay back a loan for debt. So yeah, okay. So let's go. Now, this leads right into the next question. So the next question is, I believe there's 3 different credit bureaus, but you can explain that. Tell us how many different credit bureaus are there and how do they determine their scores? Because I think they're all different scoring systems, right?
Yeah, so the main credit bureaus are Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. So those are the 3 main credit bureaus in the US, and that's what most lenders use. They all go by a credit model, which is either your FICO score or your Vantage score. Your FICO score and your Vantage score, they're basically just, it's kind of like a curve. Like, this is the way that the credit bureaus are this is the model they're using to grade you. They basically mean the same thing. They consider all of the same factors in grading you. It's just they weight them differently. So the 5 factors in your credit are paying your bills on time, so payment like history, how much you owe, so how much of a credit line you have and what you're doing with it, the length of your credit, so how long you've had certain credit accounts or certain debt, how often you apply for new credit, and also the types of credit. So just because you have a certain type of debt on your credit score, that doesn't necessarily mean that's why you have a bad score. So if you have like a student loan debt and that's the only debt you have, that might not necessarily be why you have a bad score. You may need to have other types of debt on your credit report so that it's just a healthy mix of different accounts.
It makes that was a lot. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I appreciate you breaking it down to the 5 different forms of what make up that score. That's really, I think for me, the thing that I kind of get confused on is that there's the three different companies and they all
Mhm.
have different scores. So if someone says I have an 850, well, it could be
It could be
different.
your Vantage score. It could be your FICO score.
Okay.
So the FICO score is the oldest credit model. It's what most lenders use.
Okay.
It was created back in the 80s. And it's really, like I said, it weighs all of the factors. Um, but it might weigh like your payment history, like 35%, where
Okay.
the amount of your new credit might only be weighed like 10%. Your Vantage score is actually, so the Vantage score was created by the credit bureaus. It was
Okay.
created in 2006, I believe, and it was created by the credit bureaus basically as their way of having more control over how they rate your credit. So it's still a credit model that is important, but most lenders, they're going to use your FICO score.
Okay.
So, and that's typically what I tell my clients to really look for. Like if you're using like an Experian app and you go on there and you see your FICO score, use that. Like take that and use that as your credit score rather than the Vantage score, because again, the Vantage score was created by the credit bureaus.
Okay. I see. I see. All right. So
Mhm.
now let's dive into this is the nuts and bolts of the questions that we're getting into. This is probably what everybody wants to hear about is so how can someone improve their credit score? What are some things that people can do to improve a credit score?
So the primary thing that you can do is pay your bills on time. Your credit score is not just going to show you the debt that you owe, but it's also going to show your payment history. So if you miss a payment by 30 or 30 days or more, that could drastically affect your credit score. So I tell all of my clients, pay your bills on time, please. Like as we're working together to dispute any errors, please pay your bills on time. Another big thing that actually helps people improve their score is if you have credit card debt, pay it down. So if you have a credit card and your limit is $1,000, you only ideally want to use 10% of that, ideally.
Okay.
A lot of people say keep it under 30%, but ideally you want to keep your balances low, ideally under 10%, and you'll see your credit score will remain, in the very high category. Another thing that I also say is have a healthy mix of accounts. So there are different types of accounts you can have. You can have a revolving debt, or you can have an installment debt. So an installment debt is like your car loan or your mortgage. A revolving debt is your credit card. Um, Revolving basically means like the credit card company says you can spend this amount, pay it off, and then you can spend it again. Whereas an installment loan, you're basically working to pay off a very specific amount. You're not paying it and then using it again. You're paying it with the hope to pay it off completely. The last thing that I say to a lot of my clients is if you're trying to improve your credit score, do not open a lot of new accounts at one time. Do not go out and try to get that car or try to finance like that big appliance that you want, because every single time you apply for a new account, it's going to hit your credit in some way. It could be a hard pull or a soft pull. But if you're trying to work on your credit, my best advice is don't even open yourself up to a hard or soft pull.
Gotcha. No, that's perfect segue to my next question, and which is the opposite of the previous question. No, so now it's what can you do, or how do we damage our score? So besides the obvious of just not paying your bills,
Mhm.
what are some of the most common things that people do that would cause damage to a credit score?
Paying late.
Right.
So if you're paying your bills and you're paying them late, that will affect your credit in the worst way. Um, some people try to consolidate their credit card debt, which I understand why people want to do that. If you have a ton of credit cards and you just want to make one payment to one place, um, I understand that logic. But the problem is, if you consolidate all of your credit card debt into one card, you're going to have a pretty big balance on that card. So that's going to work against your card utilization. So if you have a credit card and the limit is $10,000 and you've consolidated all of your debt onto this one card and it's $8,000, your card utilization now is out of control. And that's going to have a negative effect on your credit. Um, Another thing that I actually had to learn from a long time ago when I was on this journey is canceling credit cards that had a zero balance. So I would pay off my credit card and say, I'm not going to use this anymore. I don't need it. I would call the company and tell them to cancel it. And that is actually one of the worst things you can do because it goes against your credit age. So you want to be able to show that you've had certain accounts on your credit report for a long time. The longer you have certain accounts and the longer you can show that you've been able to manage them, the better. So instead of closing zero balance credit cards, pay them off or pay them down and then just leave them open, because that's going to add to your credit age. If you close them, it's going to be a closed account. The credit bureaus are going to be like, well, she just doesn't know how to manage it. She doesn't know how to manage having available balance, and that's going to ding your credit report. And then the other thing that I mentioned earlier is applying for too much credit. Every time you apply for what some type of credit, it's gonna hit your credit report in some way. So it will either be a hard credit pull or a soft credit pull.
Okay, so let's go back to what you were saying before. This is interesting. I'm glad you brought this up about the credit card, where you shouldn't just pay off the card and then cancel the account because it'll hurt your score.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I've always wondered about that. I've heard that, but here's what happened to me, and you tell me what you think. So I had a Discover card. That was really the only credit card I had. I had it for a long time, and I just never used it. You know, it was all paid off and everything. But I never canceled the card. They canceled it on me without even telling me. And so I called
Okay.
him up one day and I was like, yeah, I don't think I need this card anymore. I don't think I've used this card in like 20 years. I mean, it'd been a long time, definitely over 10 years. I don't think I had used it. And so I called him up to cancel it. And they said, oh yeah, we canceled that a long time ago for non-use.
Yep.
And I said, oh, really? And I forget the amount of time. There's a certain amount of time that would lapse that if it hasn't been used, they just cancel it. And I never got a letter in the mail or anything.
Yep.
No, they never even told me. So I was like, shoot, I'm glad I didn't go try to use the card if it was an
Yeah.
emergency. So
So
what do you think about that?
so that kind of a similar situation just happened to me. So I have had a Sears card for ever, and Sears really isn't a thing anymore. I don't know when's the last time I even saw a Sears store. But I've had a Sears card for a long time. I got a letter in the mail actually that said we are decreasing your limit because I hadn't used it. Then I got another letter in the mail that said it has been it was like a year and a half since your last purchase. You need to spend something basically by this amount or we're closing the card. The thing that I always say is you have to remember credit card companies are not going to work with you to help you build your credit. They are a corporation, and if they see that they have customers that are not using their services, they're basically like, well, why are we wasting our time? What I did, so once I got that letter from Sears and they said that they were going to close my account, I basically just made a small purchase on the card just to
Okay.
get it activated again. I made a small purchase and then I waited 3 or 4 days and then I just paid it down. Like I paid it down, and now I have that card back and act like it's being used again. So they're not going to close it. That's what I always suggest. I say, don't, like, if a credit card company says they're going to close your account, don't go out here and just ball out of control. Don't just spin, but just make go get gas. Go get some gas,
Right.
use it, pay it down, and that way it'll keep you in good graces with a credit card company. If you do run into the situation where they close your account and you don't know it, there's really nothing you can do. But I make it a habit of, I keep a running tab of all of my credit cards and the balances, even if they're zero. So I have like a cheat sheet that shows me all of the credit cards I have, what the balances are, and when the payment due dates are. So if I see I haven't used it in 6 or 8 months, I'm going to go and grab lunch and use that
Okay.
and then just pay it off.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, good tips for sure to know
Mhm.
there. So now let's jump into the next one. So this is another one that I hear a lot is from some of these like consumer advocates and personal finance people. They'll say you should always check your credit score at least once a year.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how often should you check your credit score, and how important is that to do?
So I say, at the very minimum, check it once a year.
Okay.
I check my credit score every 30 days,
Oh wow.
mainly because I'm a little obsessive. It's fine. Like, I just want to make sure, especially considering the climate that we're in now, identity theft is on the rise. And
Hmm.
so I just like to check things just to make sure that every account that's on there, they belong to me. And it's not something that I have to go report and try to work off my credit. But at the very least, everyone should check their credit score once a year. You can actually get your credit score or your credit report for free. So
Okay.
there is a website called annualcreditreport.com. If you go on there, you fill out some basic information, they verify your identity, and then you can download a copy of your credit report. What it won't give you is the credit score. I think if you want the actual scores, you have to pay a minimal fee, but I
Right.
never pay the fee, honestly, because I just pull the report so I can go line by line and see what accounts are being reported. Now, if I have a purchase that I want to make in the next six to 9 months and it's a big purchase and I want to finance it, when I pull that report, I might pay and pull the score just to see if I am where I should be. But if you're not using your credit for a while, I would just say pull your report and look at the accounts rather than just focusing on the score.
Okay, that's good. Good tip. So this leads right into the next question is how do you because you mentioned identity theft and stuff.
Mhm.
So this happens all the time where people pull their credit report and they'll find items on that report that don't belong to them, and sometimes it's a
Mhm.
result of identity theft. So how would someone go about having something removed from a credit report? What's the process of that?
So there are a couple of different ways. If you think that you're the victim of identity theft, the first thing I would do is freeze your credit report, honestly.
Okay.
And you can do that directly with the credit bureaus. The most effective way to get things removed from your credit report is to write a letter to the credit bureaus. Write a letter or call. You could call. The if you call, it's a process because you're going to sit on hold for a very long time. They have a lot of people calling them every day. But if you really want to dispute errors or inaccuracies on your report, sit down, write them a letter. And that's one of the services that I offer to my clients is I will actually pull their credit report for them, let them know what's affecting their score and work with them for them to tell me whether or not these accounts are theirs, whether the balances are being reported correctly. And if there are some errors, then I draft a letter on their behalf and I let the credit bureaus know exactly what is reporting inaccurately and I ask them to please correct the mistake or verify what the correct information is with the credit furnishers. I send that letter off, and then 30 to 45 days, we pull a new credit report and we see if any of our efforts have changed their score, or if the credit bureaus have fixed any of the information. So it's not something that can be done overnight. And that is the one thing that I think people really need to realize. If you make a mistake and you have items on your credit report that need to be corrected, understand that it is a process. You can do it. You just really have to like analyze your report, write a letter,
Yeah.
and work with them to get it fixed, work with the credit bureaus to get it fixed.
Sounds good. Real good advice. Now, last question is just kind of a little bit random, but I've been seeing a lot of ads lately for these apps, like these credit score apps, or like to help you with your credit score.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Have you reviewed any of these apps? Or
Oh
any of
yeah.
these apps worth trying?
Mhm. Um, I tell I tell everyone, Credit Karma is not your friend. So I mentioned before that there are two different credit models. There's FICO and there's Vantage. Okay. Well, Credit Karma created its own credit model.
Okay.
Okay. It is not accurate in the least. They basically only base their information off of two of the credit bureaus, off of only two. And I believe that is Experian and Equifax. They don't even consider TransUnion accounts. So
Okay.
anything that's being reported on your TransUnion report, it's not included in your Credit Karma score. So I tell everyone, please stay away from Credit Karma. It is not accurate. Walk away. Do not pass go. The same thing for apps like Credit Sesame. That falls under the same category as Credit Karma. The apps that I really believe in though are there's one called Identity IQ, which is it's kind of like the Rolls Royce of credit monitoring apps, in my opinion. It protects you against identity theft, number one. You can sign up to get alerted anytime like someone is using your social security number, or there's any activity that it just doesn't seem right. Identity IQ will also refresh your credit report with all three bureaus every 30 days. Um, so like 90% of my clients who work with me, they use Identity IQ, so that we can monitor their credit score together every month. The third one is called Smart Credit. Similar to Identity IQ, you can get your credit monitored every 30 days. But Smart Credit will also give you, they'll give you like an auto score, they'll give you like an insurance score. And these numbers basically will tell you your likelihood of getting approved for like an auto loan, or how much you could potentially pay in insurance based on your credit score. So I recommend Smart Credit for people who are like really planning for their future. Like they know they need to buy a new car in 6 to 9 months, and they want to work on their credit, but also see what the likelihood is that they get a good rate, get a good payment, get a good APR. Um, what I will say too is both Identity IQ and Smart Credit, they are a monthly fee. You pay
Okay.
monthly to be able to access that data. I think it's worth it, honestly. As a client of mine who, if I'm working with you on your credit, it's actually a requirement to have credit monitoring, because otherwise we're not going to be able to see in real time if our efforts are working. Um, but rule of thumb, what I always say is if you are looking at a credit monitoring app and it's free, just know that it's going to be very limited. And both
Right.
Credit Karma and Credit Sesame are free, and it's because the data is incredibly limited.
Okay. Very good. That's a great review. I had actually never heard of any of those, so I'll
Mhm.
definitely research all those. I really appreciate you sharing a little review of each of those. That's really good
No
to know.
problem.
And I hope everybody watching has learned something from that. But as we wrap up today, I just want to thank our special guest, Miss Wanda Lacey from Belle Financial Services. Now, before we leave, Wanda, let everybody know if anyone wants to connect with you or maybe take advantage of some of your services that you provide. Well, how can people reach out to you?
Sure. So you can go to bellefinancialservices.com. So Bell is Belle, Bell like beautiful. So bellefinancialservices.com. You can also reach me at Wanda at bellefinancialservices.com. On the site, you can request a consultation. All credit consultations are free. The first consultation is free. We also have customized consultations if you want to talk about something other than credit, another financial competency. And we also have an array of ebooks, kind of do-it-yourself ebooks, if you want to try disputing your credit report on your own, or if you just want to learn about overall financial wealth. So everything can be found at bellefinancialservices.com.
Awesome. And we'll link that up in the description below if anyone wants to check out your website and reach out to you further. So as we wrap up, this is Jason Brown saying thanks so much for watching, and thank you to Wanda Lacey, my special guest, for joining us. We hope you guys learned something today. And until next time, just remember my favorite saying, it's not the amount of money you make, but the margin that matters the most. We'll see you next time.